Living according to the seasons, right? That's what we're going to talk about. How Ayurveda emphasizes the need to live in harmony with nature. So basically, there's a concept of Dinacharya, that's daily routine, and there's also a concept of Ritucharya. That what that means is seasonal routine. So what we want to talk about is today how to live with seasons according to the seasons, right? That's what we're going to be talking to. So hang on 1 second. When I get Andrea Claassen, she's an Ayurveda health coach. I'm going to get her in. Thank you. All right. So Ayurveda blends science, new intuition, elements, and seasons. So here it is. Andrea, how are you? Namaste. How are you?
Hi, I'm you.
Great, great. So amazing, amazing topic because we are now coming into spring and learn a lot about spring cleansing according to Ayurveda. And Andrea is an Ayurveda counselor and she's a yoga teacher as well. And so tell us a little bit about yourself and then we can go into what Ayurveda talks about how to live according to the seasons in harmony with nature.
Yeah. So I am an Ayurvedic wellness counselor, yoga teacher, as well as personal trainer. And so I've been in the wellness field for 14 years now. And
Wow.
I grew up on a farm. And so that's kind of what really inspired me with the seasonal shifts because you really notice them, when you're out in nature and, my dad was a farmer, you pay attention to the seasons. And I think that Ayurveda does such a great job of introducing you to daily practices, seasonal practices that will shift as the seasons shift.
Wow. So let's just talk about the importance of seasonal shift, right? I mean, right now we are living in a world where, all of us are eating mangoes in December and cutting watermelons. And, when the summer comes and we are like buttersquash, and it never used to happen when we were growing up. So what is the logic of living according to the seasons as per Ayurveda?
Yeah. So living with the seasons, it really helps you kind of stay in tune with your body. It helps build
Mhm.
immunity. That's where I know you had talked about the cleanse on when you first
Yeah.
introduced it. And that's why, right now in the spring, it's so common. And again, in the fall, because if we think about the winter to the spring season, it's a
Okay.
pretty drastic shift on the body. And I'm in Minnesota. And so we have a distinct 4 seasons. And so you really feel that like this past week, we are jumping into nice warm weather here. And so
Mhm.
it's hard on the body. And so if we're not practicing those seasonal practices or slowing down to notice them, and we're eating the foods that are always in the supermarket, even though we shouldn't have avocados year round here. That's not, that shouldn't be an option, but it is. And then often people will say, oh, or if they cut into these fruits or vegetables, they're like, oh, it's already brown or it spoils so much faster because it had to be shipped in from so far away. And so really just paying attention to what's going on, with our food and having maybe a food list of what is in season right now. And that's usually where I tell people to start if they're not
Mhm.
sure what's in season, because at this time, a lot of people aren't anymore. But you can go online and Google like what is in season right now, where you live, and then really paying attention to that, or growing your own garden too. That's another option.
Well, all of us cannot grow our garden. That's kind of hard, right? Especially people who are living in the city. Okay, so someone is asking about, are there any certain foods that produce more heat in our body?
Yeah. So anything for any of the foods when you're talking about like the heat, the fire. So like right now, it's not necessarily the time that you have to stay away from them. More in the summer is when you want to watch that. Or
Yeah.
if you're a pitta dosha, sometimes those hot, spicy foods. So like tomatoes, any of the nightshades can be heating. It can be a heating food. But I always say play with it yourself just to kind of see. Because I have some clients who grew up in Mexico and
Yeah.
they're fine with the hot, spicy foods. So I have found that also as a layer to play with your foods just to kind of see what your background is. Whereas me growing up, in a farm in Minnesota, we did not like spicy and me don't go hand in hand. So that kind of is one extra layer that you can kind of pay attention to with foods that are spicy, because spicy for someone might be a little mild for other people.
Okay. So let me ask you one question. So Ayurveda talks about cleanses, the bigger cleanses. One is in the fall and the other is in the spring. Why those two? Why not in summer and winter? What is the reason?
So the fall, So the fall going into, or the summer coming into the fall, those are a big, usually temperature switches. And so our bodies are kind of prepping. Now, often when we think about illness too and helping build up our immunity, you know,
Yeah.
winter, flu season, colds, all of that. And then when we come into the spring, it's kind of the same thing. It's sometimes more respiratory, cold, stuff like that gets stuck in the lungs. And so it's to help build immunity. And then summer, you usually are having less food, and the winter you're usually having a little bit more hearty foods like soups, stews, things like that, instead of having like your cleanse. But you can have khichdi, you know, year round. Like that's something that you can enjoy all year.
Sure. And then is the cleanse in spring versus the fall, is there a difference between the two cleanse?
There's, I mean, depending on, I've had many different teachers teach me this, and it depends on the teacher I have found.
Okay.
Khichdi is your main
Yes.
meal for, you know, both fall and for the spring. And sometimes they have different chutneys depending on the season. So during, you might have a little bit more heating chutneys right now and a little bit more cooling, you know, in the fall. And so kind of paying attention to how you're maybe adding in those spices. And I've had other cleanses where people don't, you know, it's just strictly the khichdi. That's all you're supposed to have. So it kind of depends on the teacher. I have found to see what their preference is, and then what preference you have. Because I think sometimes too, it's all about, Ayurveda is all about, you know, finding what's best for you, and we're all different. So, you know, some people like a bone broth in the evening instead of khichdi one night because they're done with khichdi. And, you know, again, some teachers are yes, some teachers say no. So what is best for you?
Okay, but on just on a higher framework, let's say this simple cleanse, and this cleanse is different than panchakarma, which is a, you know, granddaddy of detoxification we are talking about, and that's a completely different subject. That's, we are going into ailments, medical ailments. This is like a simple reset of your body, right? That's what we understand. So this is like what, 5 days? What are the guidelines? Is what I'm trying to understand for our viewers. You know, is it something can they do it at home? Do they need someone like yourself? I mean, what does that look like?
Yeah. So the cleanse, like 3 to 5 days, if you're a Vata dosha in general, is kind of the guideline there. Pitta dosha, 5 to 7. Kaphas can get away with like 7 to 10 days. So kind of on your dosha, as well as if you have any imbalances going on. So you might, you know, kind of adjust accordingly. But that's where usually you have khichdi for all your meals, whether that's 2 or 3 meals a day. And that's kind of where you're at. Again, you can add that chutney in it. So sometimes people like the chutney just to give a little bit more texture and to mix it up. And I've had it where I'll have bone broth. I personally will do bone broth in exchange for an evening khichdi if that's what I'm feeling, or if I'm just kind of over khichdi by day 6.
Too much khichdi going on for like so many days.
Yes. And I always find accountability helps too with the cleanses. And so getting into like a group environment, because it does get hard, you know, those first couple of days when you're, you know, starting to really dive into it. And I personally like to pair the cleanse, because, you know, we're all about 5 senses too, is taking a social media detox for those days, really trying to, you know, cut down on your work hours. So, you know, when I have my clients take one, I'm like, okay, find a time in your work week where you're not going to be, you know, slammed with a ton of projects. Try to pick a week where it's a little bit more relaxed. So that way you can really tune into what's going on.
So in addition to the food, the khichdi, which we understand, what else are we supposed to do during the cleanse time? I mean, do we do abhyanga, like an oil massage? Should we do, you know, like oil in our nose? And what are the things that you recommend? Or Ayurveda recommends, I should say that.
Yeah. So in this spring season, I really like to do dry brushing and then abhyanga. And so like I brought a dry brush. So in case anyone.
Oh, wow.
So
oh my God. Okay. So what do you do? Just kind of.
Yes. So when you always start, I like to start, I'll show you my arms just because my arm is right here, but you go up, you brush up towards your heart. So anytime you dry brush, you're going towards your heart, and you can do little circular motions, and then you're going to up towards the heart. And then at the legs, same thing. You can go the feet all the way up your legs, little circular motions up towards the heart. And that's to help get the lymphatic system moving, circulation, and especially in the spring, energy can get stuck, stagnant. And so I really like this. And then if you have drier skin, you know, pairing it up then with abhyanga after, and then hopping in the shower or a bath. That's a great practice to do during the cleanse week. Neti pot is also something that I like to do in the springtime as well, especially if people have allergies. Polyps is the only time that you don't want to use it. So if you have polyps, which means Someone had asked me the other day, how do I know if I have them? And I said, if you're having trouble getting the water, if it's not draining through and you keep retilting your head and nothing's going through, you might have some. And then typically, a doctor can let you know too if you have them. But that would be another suggestion too with the neti pot. CCFT, so coriander fennel tea. I really like to incorporate that into a cleanse and just in general as well. That's great to have after your meals to help with digestion. And fennel in particular in the spring is really great for that kapha dosha to get things moving again, because we're all about pacifying that stuck, stagnant energy that can come during the season.
And so, no, that's great. And what about, like, do you also recommend purgation in the sense taking Triphala tablets or something to kind of like, cleanse your intestine here? And can you do that at home by yourself or?
Yeah. So Triphala, I have a couple of thoughts on that. So Triphala, I will have you, if you're constipated or if you're getting constipated on the cleanse, then yes, definitely Triphala. I've had teachers who said, try to use it only as a last resort. I personally do, but I found if you're a Vata dosha or you're prone to constipation, Triphala can be a nice thing or probably needed to be added into your cleanse protocol at the end of the evening. And that's one that I also had people, just a heads up, if you're trying to get pregnant or pregnant, don't take Triphala or breastfeeding. That's one that you want to kind of stay away from, just because I found sometimes people don't always know that.
So what you're saying is, let's say if someone starts a khichdi cleanse, there is the chances that they'll get constipated because of the mono diet. Is that what it is, right?
It can be. Yep, it can be. And it kind of depends on where they're, where they're at coming into the cleanse. So I always like to do a couple, like a week prep week, just to kind of get people, okay, let's get going. So you're not just going into this, like, I'm going to start Monday and then you haven't done any prep work this week. So maybe you're drinking a couple cups of coffee a day. Maybe you have alcohol. If you have alcohol in the evening, you're going to have all of that processed sugar during the day. And then you're going to take all of that out. Your body is going to be really, it's not going to like you after day one, and you probably will get right back to your regular diet the next day. So having that prep week where you slowly start to pull things back. Okay, if you're having 2 cups of coffee, let's take it down to 1. Okay, how can we eliminate some of the sugars that you might be having? And that way, when you start your cleanse, you're not coming in it like you're ripping everything away.
Correct. And then after the cleanse, is there something like a replenish kind of you have to replenish your body, right? With more normal meals. How do we do that?
Yeah. And that's kind of the same thing. So if you think about coming off of the cleanse, if you're going to throw all of the coffee and all of the foods and the meats, if you're going to put it all back in, again, that's going to override your system. So slowly introducing those things. And sometimes you might find like, actually, I don't want to introduce coffee back in. So having those fresh foods, looking at what's seasonal, having, I always like a quinoa is one of the grains that I like. So a quinoa, like a bean, so a black bean, lentil, whatever you want to add to it, coconut milk, something like that, just kind of nourishing meal where it's still warm. It's still, you're able to digest it. And then slowly starting to add in maybe a little bit of meat if you're going to have meat. And then just kind of going from there rather than, again, dumping it all back into your plate, coming off the cleanse on day one. Sure.
Someone asked a question about thoughts on vinegar, apple cider vinegar. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, this would not be my Ayurvedic thoughts, but I have fire cider. I don't know if you've heard of fire cider.
I'm sorry, what?
Do you know what fire cider is? So fire cider is something that I actually make, and this is the only time that I have the apple cider vinegar. And so it is a heating, so it can be, heating to the body. So kind of, paying attention to that. But your apple cider vinegar, you throw in like a horseradish, you throw in peppers, you throw in a whole bunch of hot things. You let it sit for a month. You strain it. And this is one thing that I actually really like in the winter. Just as like if I'm feeling like run down or sick, I take a tablespoon of that. And that just kind of helps keep things away. And it usually replenishes you, kind of gives you that kickstart. But this winter, I have not used mine at all, just because we've all had masks on and, been feeling pretty well. So that's something that I just have in the cupboard. And that's usually the only time I personally do apple cider vinegar.
Okay. All right. So what else would you like to talk about in the cleanse part? I mean, what else should we know? Just the framework part.
Yeah. I would say also paying attention to movement. This is coming from movement is also key, especially in that springtime, because that dosha, the energy again, can get that stuck. and stagnant. And when we think about that, if we're looking outside, you know, what's going on outside is going on inside our body. So, you know, you got your mud, you got sludge, all of the slime. And so if that's building up in your body and you're not moving it out, you know, that's where you get stuck. So I liked movement in terms of, you know, if you're gonna do yoga, back bends are great during this time of the year. Twist to kind of get stuff out of the chest. And then just going for walks. So a walk after you have your dinner, a family walk, that's a great idea. Walking after you have lunch right now, you know, if you're still working at home, and that's just a great way to kind of get the track moving. So rather than just coming back and sitting down at a desk, you know, you can get some stuff going there. So that's something that I really like to do. And then using the nice weather, like going outside right now for those walks at any time of the day, because it's usually not super hot for most people during the spring season.
So the movement part would be part of the the cleanse part. During the cleanse, like you would wake up in the morning and you would do like sun salutations or some kind of a routine, a yoga routine or a breathing pranayama routine, and then get into the Abhyanga. Is that what you're suggesting? You could.
Okay. So it depends on how you're feeling with the cleanse. So some people, if they're coming into the cleanse and they're feeling depleted, a ton of movement might not be best for them. They might just need to, you know, take the meditation, you know, the mantra practice, a little bit more stillness versus the movement. But once you're off of the cleanse, that's when you might want to make sure, okay, now I can get to moving to break up some of that kapha energy. And then leading up to the cleanse, you know, having that movement to make sure going so you can sit. And that's a great time to do. I mean, and you might find if you're taking time off social media as well.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. You know, you can practice yoga nidra, you know, in the afternoon, and you can build in these spaces and the time that a lot of us, sometimes time gets to be something where we don't think we have enough of it. But then sometimes that might be eye-opening. I know it was for me the first time I started taking those breaks. I was like, I have time to practice all of these things that I didn't think I did in the past.
Yeah. Sort of like a tune-up, right? Think of it like we need to think of it as tune-up of our bodies. Like we get our cars done once, I don't know how many times in a year we get the car tire balancing and all kind of things, and we never pay attention to our balancing.
Yes, exactly right. And checking in, just kind of seeing, okay, what's going on right now, because every year is different as well. You know, just as every season you're coming in from a different starting point and just kind of noticing like, oh, okay, like maybe you do really well. For me, I have found this is always the toughest time of year. Like my kapha gets really stuck in, you know, January, February, just because it's dark, it's dreary here in Minnesota, it's cold. And so I find I need to like really bust things up in March because I want to get moving. I want to make sure I'm not still stuck in that dull, just kind of low energy phase. Yeah.
All right. So the step number one is to understand your constitution, right? That's what I understood. So based on your constitution, which Ayurveda talks about, it's a personalized system, personalized medicine system. And based on your personal constitution, whether you are Vata, Pitta, or Kapha, based on that, the cleanse would be personalized design for you so that it is according to your body, right? That's what I'm understanding.
Yep, that's exactly right. And so that way you can kind of know going in like, okay, it's going to be best for me. And I always say with that range, that 3 to 5 for Vata, 5 to 7 for Pitta.
Yeah.
So all of those ranges, like I tell people, you know, have a day in mind though. So when you go into it, if you say, I'm going to do it between 5 or 7, you know, I'm like, go for 7. And then after 5, if you feel like, okay, this is enough, then you can stop early, but have that date set out because that will help motivate you to kind of keep going as well.
And then you recommend doing the cleanse with someone like yourself, or people can do it at home, or what are the recommendations?
Yeah, I mean, I found I really like having someone, you know, help guide you, especially if it's you, because, you know, you're going to have things that come up, you know, if you do get constipated or, you know, your digestion, maybe it's too fiery, it's too fast. You can have that help to just give you little tweaks or to give you the proper, you know, let's do 3 days. Maybe for you, if it's your first time, we just stick with the 3 days. If you're and you can have those other practices built in, you know, because sometimes like I'm a Pitta, taking a week off workouts, like that, no, I don't want to. So like, how can I give you practices that are going to be beneficial to you, but not burn you out at the end of this?
Sure. No, I think it makes sense. I mean, you know, Ayurveda it's a very intelligent science. It's 5,000 years old, and it's mind-boggling that how they figured out all those things 5,000 years back, and now here we are incorporating the same principles in this day and age when, we are talking about going to the moon and AI and all kind of things, right?
Yes, yes. And that's where one of my teachers was saying, like, we were talking about intermittent fasting, and she was like, Ayurveda's been doing that for 5,000 years, started to come around here. And so some of those habits, like, even the dry brush, people are starting to get more familiar with that is, or, a self massage, all of those things people are like, oh, I've heard of that before. And it's been around for, centuries.
Yes, yes. No, I think amazing people like yourself, advocacy is so important, awareness is so important, so that people can start taking care of themselves, right? Whether following the Dinacharya, like some kind of a daily routine and seasonal routine. So the idea is to really, I was reading on your blog, you talk such beautiful of blended approach to your health, using Ayurveda, nature, movement, and mindfulness, right, as the medicine of your life. And it's so beautifully said on your blog, and I'm just actually taking from your blog and repeating it, but because I found it so beautiful the way you've expressed it.
Thank you so much.
Well, all right, any comments, anyone? I think people have some questions. We took care of the question. Any other comments or feedback you have? Well, someone is saying both of you are intellectual. I don't think so. We are trying our best to advocate, really honestly advocate natural medicine on a daily basis, and that's really the goal is. Okay, well, this is not a class on lack of confidence. I'm sorry, we've been talking about seasonal routines as per Ayurveda. That is the topic. I think you joined just recently. So I know I see people joining now. We have been talking about Ayurveda's, what they call is Dinacharya, seasonal routine as per Ayurveda. If you cannot catch it right now, you can catch the recording. With that, I'd like to wrap up this session. Anything else you'd like to add before I wrap up?
No, I think that was great. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And thank you for everyone. Have a great weekend. Cleanse yourself. Spring is coming, and take rest and self-love. That's the thing. With that, signing off. Bye.